There is a sound, or rather, a silence, that modern humanity has been taught to fear more than almost any other. It is the sudden, unnerving quiet that follows the death of a low electric hum, the sound of the refrigerator giving up the ghost. In that silence, a primal clock begins to tick, a countdown to spoilage, to waste, to loss. We rush, we panic, we scramble for ice chests and neighbors' freezers. Our entire architecture of sustenance, our trust in tomorrow's meal, is built upon that single fragile hum. But what if that silence wasn't an ending? What if it was a beginning? Have you ever truly wondered what it would mean to live without that hum? Not just for a day or a week during a storm, but forever? And I don't mean a life of bleak, desperate survival, chewing on salted leather. I mean a life of flavor, of abundance, of deep, unshakable security. Could it be that we, in our magnificent electrified age, have forgotten a more profound and resilient way of living? A wisdom that lies not in a sealed plastic box, but buried deep in the earth and whispered on the dry autumn wind. Today, we are not just going to look at history. We are going to try and feel it. We're going to step past the caricatures of the Dark Ages and into the quiet, intelligent world of a medieval homestead. We will uncover how our ancestors, with nothing but their hands, their wits, and an intimate knowledge of the world around them, managed to keep their tables full through the harshest winters. And here's the secret that history often forgets to tell us. They did it without mountains of salt, and certainly without a single watt of electricity. This is a story of resilience, a story of ingenuity, but more than that, it's a story about a relationship with food that we have almost completely lost. And by the end of our time together, I promise you, the silence of a powerless kitchen will never sound the same again. Our story begins not in a castle nor on a battlefield, but in the dirt. It begins with a girl named Alara, let's call her that. She's perhaps 9 years old, her hands stained with the dark, rich soil of a late October afternoon. The sun is a pale golden coin, low in the sky, and the air smells of frost and wood smoke. For Alara, this is the most important time of the year. It's not a time of fear, of scarcity's approach. It is a time of ritual, a time of trust. She follows her father, not to the larder, but to a small, heavy wooden door set into a mound of earth behind their cottage. He lifts the thick iron ring and the door groans open, releasing a breath of cool, damp air. It's a smell that for us might signal mold, decay, something to be avoided. For Ilara, it is the scent of life, the perfume of security. This is the root cellar. We think of it as a dusty, spider-filled hole in the ground, but to a medieval family, the root cellar was a second womb. It was the quiet, beating heart of their survival. Inside, it is dark, but her eyes adjust. She sees not chaos, but order, a kind of living library of food. Her father has already prepared it. Bins filled not with dirt, but with clean, slightly damp sand. And into this sand they begin their work. Ilara takes a carrot, pulled from the earth just an hour ago. She brushes the excess soil from its shoulders, feels its firm, living density. She doesn't wash it. To wash it would be to invite rot, to break the thin, invisible shield its own skin provides. She places it carefully into the sand, making sure it doesn't touch its neighbor. Then another, and another. They are planting them all over again, tucking them into a cool, sandy bed for their long winter sleep. They do the same with parsnips, with turnips, with the humble, earthy beet. Each vegetable returned to a facsimile of the earth that birthed it. The cellar's genius, you see, was its profound simplicity. Its constant, unforced temperature, hovering naturally between 32 and 40 degrees Fahrenheit, or 0 to 5 degrees Celsius, slowed the respiration of the roots.
It didn't stop their life force, it calmed it, persuading the vegetables to breathe more slowly, to age with grace. The humidity, often managed by leaving a bucket of water or by the natural dampness of the earth, prevented them from shriveling into woody husks. Archaeobotanical studies from sites across Europe, like the settlement at Warham Percy in England, have unearthed the remains of these structures, confirming their critical role. These were not primitive holes. They were sophisticated, climate-controlled environments, engineered with an astonishing understanding of natural processes. Ilara moves to the other side, where her mother has been working. Here, she lays out late-season apples, each one carefully placed on a bed of straw, again ensuring they don't touch. A single rotting apple could, through the release of ethylene gas, doom its neighbors. They knew this. Not the chemistry, perhaps, but the consequence. They knew it in their bones, a knowledge passed down not in textbooks, but in proverbs and quiet demonstrations from mother to daughter, father to son. And in that moment, something shifted inside me when I first truly pictured this scene. I had always imagined the medieval winter as a gray, monotonous diet of bread and salted meat. But here, in this dark, earthy space, was the promise of sweetness and crunch even in the deepest snows of January. The promise of a roasted carrot, sweet as candy, of a hearty beet stew, its color a defiant splash of purple against the winter white. This wasn't just storage. This was an act of profound intimacy with their food. They weren't sealing it away in a sterile box. They were collaborating with it, creating the perfect conditions for it to continue its life, albeit at a much slower pace. They were entrusting their future to the quiet, living pulse of the earth itself. But what about the things that couldn't be buried? The delicate greens, the fleeting bounty of summer mushrooms, the herbs that held the very essence of sunshine in their leaves. For that, we must leave a Lara cellar and move closer to the heart of the home, to the hearth itself. Let's imagine another soul. Let's call her Brenna, a woman whose hands are never still. Her world is the cottage, its single large room filled with the rhythms of domestic life. At its center, always, is the fire. The fire is heat, it is light. It is the place of transformation, where raw becomes cooked, where grain becomes bread. But in the late summer and autumn, it takes on another role. It becomes a machine for preservation. Hanging from the dark, smoky rafters above, you would see a sight that would be utterly foreign to our modern eyes. Long, threaded strings of sliced mushrooms, looking like rustic necklaces. Bunches of herbs, thyme, rosemary, sage, tied with twine, slowly releasing their pungent oils into the warm, dry air. On a wooden rack, placed a safe distance from the flames, thin slices of leek and onion lie like pale, translucent wafers, slowly, patiently giving up their moisture. This is the art of drying, and it is, perhaps, the oldest preservation magic of all. We hear drying, and we think of industrial dehydrators, of plastic-wrapped beef jerky. But for Brenna, this was a slow, gentle sensory process. It was about paying attention. Too close to the fire and the food would scorch, turning bitter. Too far away and in the damp climate of Northern Europe, mold would be a constant threat. It required a deep, intuitive understanding of airflow, of radiant heat, of humidity. The science is simple, as we now know. Removing water, typically down to a moisture content of 5 to 10%, makes it impossible for the bacteria and molds that cause decay to survive. But the result was anything but simple. Drying concentrates flavor. A dried mushroom holds a deeper, earthier, more potent umami than its fresh counterpart. A dried leek, when crumbled into a winter pottage, rehydrates into a burst of sweet, savory intensity. Food historians, like Dr. Philip Slavin from the University of Stirling, have analyzed medieval household accounts and have shown how these dried goods were a crucial part of the economy of the home. They weren't just for the family. They were a form of currency, a tradable good, a measure of a household's foresight and diligence. For Brenna, every bunch of herbs she tied was a repository of memory. The sage would be for the winter solstice feast, to be rubbed on a precious piece of pork. The thyme was for stews. It sent a reminder of the buzzing bees of July. The dried onions were a guarantee that even the leanest broth would have a foundation of flavor. She was, in essence, trapping sunlight. She was capturing the soul of summer and hanging it from her ceiling, a promise that the vibrant tastes of the past year would carry her family through the darkness to come.
There's a deep emotional resonance to this we can still access. Have you ever smelled herbs drying in a kitchen? Or brought a bundle of lavender indoors? That scent is a bridge across time. It connects us directly to Brenna's world. It's the smell of self-reliance, the smell of a home that provides for itself. And it was often a communal act. Women would gather, their hands busy, their voices sharing stories, news, and wisdom as they prepared the harvest for its long sleep. It was a ritual that bound the community together, a shared effort against the coming cold. Each string of mushrooms was a testament to their collective resilience. They were creating a pantry that was alive with flavor, texture, and potential. A pantry that did not depend on a humming machine, but on the ancient, reliable power of fire and air. But the medieval genius for preservation went even deeper. It ventured into a realm that, to our modern sanitized minds, often seems dangerous, even taboo. It ventured into the world of controlled decay, of alchemy, of fermentation. For this, we must travel to a different place, not a cottage, but a monastery. Let's picture a man, Brother Anselm. He is a man of letters, of quiet observation. His world is one of prayer, work, and study. And in the monastery gardens and kitchens, work and study become one. Monasteries were the Silicon Valleys of the medieval world. They were centers of innovation, of agricultural science, of meticulous record-keeping. And one of their greatest contributions was the refinement of fermentation. Now, when we think of fermenting vegetables, our minds immediately go to salt, to sauerkraut, to kimchi, packed in heavy brine. Salt was indeed used, but it was a valuable commodity. In many inland areas, it was too expensive to be used in the vast quantities we use today for pickling. So, they perfected a method that required very little or sometimes none at all. The magic was not in the salt. It was in the microbes. Brother Anselm has a surplus of cabbage from the garden. It is crisp, beautiful, but it will not last the week. He shreds it finely, his knife moving with practiced ease. He might pack it into a large earthenware crock. He might add a tiny pinch of precious salt, not primarily as a preservative, but for flavor and to help draw the initial moisture from the cabbage leaves. He might add caraway seeds or juniper berries harvested from the monastery grounds. Then he pounds it. He presses the cabbage down with a wooden tamper, bruising the leaves, forcing them to release their own liquid. This is the crucial step. He pounds until the cabbage is submerged in its own juices. He places a clean stone on top to keep it weighted down, submerged in its own world. And then he waits. He puts the crock in a cool corner of the cloister, and a miracle begins. A silent, invisible war is waged in that crock. On the surface of the raw cabbage, there are countless species of bacteria and yeast, good and bad. But by creating an anaerobic environment, an environment without oxygen, Anselm has given the advantage to one specific family of bacteria. We know them today as lactobacillus. These tiny organisms, present on virtually every living plant, consume the natural sugars in the cabbage and convert them into lactic acid. This lactic acid is the magic ingredient. It lowers the pH of the brine, making it inhospitable to the microbes that cause rot. But it does more than that. It transforms the cabbage. The flavor becomes complex, tangy, and sharp.
The texture remains crisp. And in a stroke of biological genius that Anselm would have called a gift from God, the process actually increases the nutritional value of the food, creating B vitamins and enzymes that make it easier to digest.
He didn't know the names of the bacteria. He didn't understand the chemistry of pH. But he understood the process. He understood the signs. The gentle bubbling in the first few days. The clean, sour smell that told him the right kind of life was winning the war in the crock. He knew this through centuries of accumulated monastic wisdom, of trial and error, of patient, silent observation. A 2022 study by the Max Planck Institute on the history of food preservation highlights how these low-salt fermentation techniques were not just about survival, but about creating distinct, desirable culinary products that were central to regional diets. This was not decay. This was resurrection. It was taking a vegetable at the peak of its life and giving it a new, more stable, and even more nutritious form of life. A life that could last for months in a cool cellar, providing a vital source of vitamins in the dead of winter, warding off the scourge of scurvy. Have you ever tried preserving food the old-fashioned way? Fermenting, drying, or canning? Share your story below. We read everything. There's a certain magic to it, isn't there? A feeling of connection that you just don't get from buying a jar at the store. And the monastic ingenuity didn't stop there. They were also masters of another, sweeter kind of preservation. In the world of Brother Anselm, there was another golden substance, as miraculous as the sun itself: honey. Honey is a biological marvel. It is one of the few foods on earth that, if stored properly, simply does not spoil. Its low water content and high acidity make it a fortress against microbial life. The medievals knew this. While sugar was an expensive, imported luxury, honey was a local resource, harvested from skeps in the monastery's apiary. They would use it to preserve small, delicate things: wild berries, small roots like scarlet or rampion, even flower petals like violets or roses. Submerged in a crock of honey, these fragile items were perfectly protected, their essence captured in the golden viscous liquid. Imagine, on a cold February day, opening a jar and tasting a raspberry that still held the ghost of summer, or adding honey-preserved ginger to a medicinal tea. This wasn't just about calories, it was about preserving moments of joy, of intense flavor, to be deployed like precious jewels during the bleakest months. What strikes me about Elara and Brenna and Brother Anselm is that their relationship with food was a dialogue. They were active participants in its journey. They listened to it. They understood its nature, its strengths, its weaknesses. They didn't seek to dominate it with overwhelming force like brute force salting or freezing. They sought to persuade it, to coax it, to collaborate with it, using the subtle, powerful forces of nature itself. The cool stillness of the earth, the dry warmth of the air, the invisible life of benevolent microbes, the timeless purity of honey. So we return to the silence of the dead refrigerator. We started with that feeling of panic, of loss of control. But perhaps, after walking with Elara, Brenna, and Anselm, that silence can be filled with something else. Not anxiety, but curiosity, a sense of possibility. We have been taught to believe that their lives were brittle, hanging by a thread, that one bad harvest meant starvation. And while hardship was undeniably real, we have profoundly underestimated their resilience. Their system of sustenance was not a single fragile power cord plugged into a distant grid. It was a web woven from 100 different threads. If the grain harvest was poor, perhaps the apple harvest was good. If the apples failed, perhaps the nuts in the forest were plentiful. If the summer was too wet to dry mushrooms, it was perfect for the cabbages destined for the fermentation crock. Their security did not lie in one single infallible technology. It lay in their diversity of knowledge. It lay in their deep, personal, and communal wisdom. And here is the hidden truth, the most important lesson I believe they have to teach us. We think we preserve food. We put carrots in the crisper. We put leftovers in Tupperware. We are preserving things.
They didn't just preserve things, they preserved relationships. Ilara's cellar was a physical manifestation of her family's relationship with the soil. Brenna's drying rack was a testament to her relationship with the sun and the hearth. Brother Anselm's crock was a partnership with an invisible world of microbes he trusted implicitly. Their food preservation was the byproduct of a deep, abiding, and respectful relationship with the natural world in all its cycles, seasons, and subtleties. We have traded that web of resilient relationships for the convenience of a single humming box. And it has given us unimaginable abundance, there is no denying that. It has given us strawberries in winter and asparagus in autumn. But what have we lost in the trade? We have lost the rhythm of the seasons. We have lost the deep satisfaction of eating something you have personally ushered through time. We have lost the communal joy of working together to secure a collective future. We have, in many ways, lost the story of our food. It arrives anonymous and silent in plastic packaging, its journey a mystery. I don't say this to suggest we should all go back to living in wattle and daub cottages. That would be absurd. But I say it to suggest that the wisdom of our ancestors is not obsolete. It is a quiet voice, drowned out by the noise of our modern world, but it is waiting for us to listen. It invites us to plant a small pot of herbs on our windowsill and watch it grow. It encourages us to try drying some apple rings in a low oven just to smell the aroma fill our kitchen. It whispers to us to maybe, just maybe, try making our own small batch of sauerkraut, to watch and wonder at the quiet miracle of fermentation. It asks us to see our food not just as fuel, but as a story that we can be a part of. The next time you stand in your kitchen, listen. Listen past the hum of the appliances. Listen for the echo of Ilara's footsteps on the cellar stairs, for the sound of Brenna's knife slicing leeks, for the quiet prayer of thanks from Brother Anselm as he tastes the sharp, living tang of his creation. Their knowledge is our inheritance. It is a blueprint for a more resilient, more connected, and dare I say, a more deeply human way of eating and of living. It's a reminder that the most enduring things are not kept in cold boxes of steel, but in the warm, living network of memory, skill, and the quiet, unwavering heartbeat of the earth. Thank you for joining us on this journey. If this story resonated with you, please consider sharing it. And we would genuinely love to hear your own family stories of preservation or your own experiments in the kitchen in the comments below. Your wisdom adds to the great web of this story. Subscribe for more journeys into the heart of our shared past. Be well.